This is lesson 7.5, two-step trig. So instead of using trigonometric ratios only one time, sometimes we have to do it multiple times to arrive at the final answer. And we know we have to do multiple steps if we see multiple triangles touching or overlapping. So we're going to compare and contrast the two scenarios below. How can we arrive at our final answer? So looking down here, the first one on the left says, how far apart are the cars? And then the other one says, how far apart are the boats? So for how far apart are the cars over here with this helicopter, what we're going to do is we're going to look at it and we're going to try to figure out what we need to do in order to get the answer. So when I look at this, just like the question set up above, I see that there are multiple triangles in this diagram. There's a triangle here, and there's also a triangle here. Now, what would I have to do to figure out how far apart those cars are? Well, the cars are about that far apart. In order to find the total length, what we could do is we could take the bottom of each triangle and add them together. Now, how do we actually do that though? What we need to do is we need to redraw each triangle separately from the other. And you know I like to color code when I do that. Then I'm going to label. So I see that in between, there's a 575 that is in both triangles. Then I also need to make sure that I use my alternate interior angles to help me for my angle of elevation and my angle of depression. And because I need to add the bottom together, I'm going to find the base here as X, and I'm going to label the other one as Y. You could call them A and B. You could call it whatever you want. But what I'm going to just do here is I now have two separate trig questions. So all I'm going to do is do them separately. Over here, I have my opposite side and my adjacent. So I'm going to use tangent. Oop, I was going to write O over A. 575 over X. Now on the other side, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to find my tangent of 38 is equal to 575 over Y. Now all you would do here is you would solve for X and Y, and once you're done solving, you're going to add X and Y together to get your final answer. Now how does this change if I look over on the left? How far apart are the boats? So for this question, when I look at my two triangles, I have this triangle here, and I have this larger triangle. How am I going to figure out how far apart they are? I'm looking for this distance. Notice I'm not looking for a part or a whole like before. I'm looking for a part. So because I'm looking for a part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to need to subtract. So again, the way that I would start it would be like normal by separating out both of my triangles. Making sure that I've marked any sides or angles. So my angle in my yellow triangle is 28, and the side on the right is 245. In the pink triangle, I have a 245 and a 12. And I'm looking for the bottom of these triangles. Again, I can call them X and Y, A and B, whatever you want. And again, you're just going to do two different steps for trig. So I'm going to do tangent again. Tangent of 28 is 245 over X. Once I solve that, I'm going to do tangent of 28 is 245 over Y. Now I made a mistake over here. I accidentally wrote, nope, I'm good on both. Sorry, I thought I wrote 28 twice. All right, now that I've got that, at the very end, what are we going to do? We're going to take the larger number and subtract the smaller number to get our total. So these are the two types of questions that you're going to see today. Either we're going to add or we're going to subtract. So now we have question 1. From a point on the ground 300 feet from the base of the factory. So from a point on the ground 300 feet from the base of the factory. I'm going to write that down right away. Then it says the angle of elevation at the top of the factory is 38 degrees. So I'm this little guy over here. And if I look at the top of the factory, I'm just looking here. So this angle of elevation is 38. Then it says that the angle of elevation to the top of the smokestack, so again, from the bottom to the top of the smokestack, this larger angle is 52 degrees. Sorry, I don't know if you guys could hear that. There's pipes near me. And we're going to need to find the total height of just the smokestack. So I'm going to put an X in this diagram. Now notice, I'm not finding the whole thing. I'm only needing to find a part. So because I'm finding a part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write myself a note that I'm going to need to subtract. So again, here's our rules. 1, we're going to make sure that we label. Once we labeled, we're going to draw those triangles separated from one another. Once we've drawn them separated, we're going to actually use tangent. And then once we've done that, we're going to subtract. So let's start with 1. We've labeled it. Great. Now we're going to separate those two triangles. So looking at the very large triangle, I'm going to draw that right here. And I've got my sides that I can label. I have the bottom is 300. I know that the big angle in that triangle is 52. And because I need to find the length of the smokestack, I'm going to put an X right there. Then I'm going to look at my other triangle, my much smaller triangle down here. And I'm going to redraw that triangle. The bottom is 300. I need 38. And then I'm going to need to find this side because this is where they overlap. And that's where I'm going to need to subtract. Or that's what I'm going to need to subtract. So now we're going to do tangent twice. Tangent of 52 is x over 300. And I'm going to solve. In order to solve, we put this over 1 and we cross multiply. 300 times the tangent of 52 equals x. And then you're going to use your graphing calculator. And we get a very long answer. We get 383 point, oh geez, my Chromebook keeps messing up. Okay, 383.9824 ... We're just going to write. Then we're going to do the same thing over here for our yellow triangle. Tangent of 38 equals our opposite over our adjacent. Again, I can put it over 1 and cross multiply. 300 times the tangent of 38 equals y. And I write down this number, 3856, ... And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract. In order to subtract them, what I do is I scroll up into my calculator and hit minus, and then I scroll up into my calculator again to subtract them. Otherwise, sometimes we wind up with weird answers if we round too early. So we do not round until our final answer. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to take my x, I need to take my y, I subtract them. Oh, I love that. Okay, great. And I get 149.5968. But now I can round it. So my rounded answer needs to be to the nearest foot. So to the nearest foot, it's 150. All right, let's take a look at the next one. This one is very similar to the first one. I'm going to just help you out for a second and remind us that the angle, or where I'm going to help you with labeling. Okay, sorry. So an observer from the top of the lighthouse, 350 feet above sea level, or 370 feet. So we're going to put our 370 there. Then it spots two sailboats in the water. The angles of depression to the boats are 12 degrees and 10 degrees. Now you might be asking me which one goes where. To be honest, it doesn't really matter as long as you subtract and know that your answer should be a positive number. But technically, the larger angle would be more closer to the lighthouse if you want to make sure. All right. So remember that the angle of elevation and the angle of depression are the same. So I always put my angles in my triangles just like that. Again, you're going to follow those steps. This time, let's look at the diagram to see. If we're finding how far apart the boats are, what are we going to need to do? If I'm finding a part, I'm going to need to subtract. Okay, so ultimately, we're going to need to subtract at the end of this question to get our final answer. I'm going to leave that one for you to do if you'd like, because this one is a little bit different. So here we have two vertical cliffs on the opposite sides of a 90-foot wide river. So here's our river. It is 90 feet across. From point A on the shorter cliff, the angle of elevation to the top of the other cliff is 28 degrees. And the angle of depression to the bottom of the cliff is 38 degrees. So this is when we might want to put that 38 right there in that triangle. Then it says we need to find the height of the cliffs. So here is what we need to do to find B. We're going to think to ourselves, how are we going to find that bit? Well, what am I going to need to do? I'm going to need to take both pieces and I'm going to need to add them together to find our whole. Now, the other thing that I want to pay attention to in this question is that we have 90 labeled here at the bottom. So that 90 at the bottom there also, remember, is this distance between the two cliffs, which means that I can put it right up here. It's the distance between the two cliffs, whether it's at the bottom or in the middle. So now when I separate out those triangles, oh my goodness, look at, here we go. I've got two triangles that are kind of up and down this time. The bottom of this triangle is 90. The angle is 28. And I'm going to need to find this side of my triangle so that I can add them together. Then I'm going to look over here at my green triangle. This time, this side is 90 because that's our reflexive or shared side. And then the angle of that triangle is 38. And I'm going to put a Y over here. Now, the reason why I use two different variables is because I don't want to have two different X's and get confused as to like what I'm doing. So I just like to put one as X and one as Y. Now that we've done that, all we're going to do for each is find our stuff. So we got tan 28 equals, my opposite is x, my adjacent is 9. Over here, I've got tangent of 38 is equal to, my opposite is y, my adjacent is 90. This time when I go to cross multiply, I would get 90 times tangent 28 equals x. And I'm going to type that into my calculator. I get 47.8538 dot dot dot. Then in the other triangle, if I cross multiply, I get y equals 70.3157 dot dot dot. And again, once we have our x and our y, we're going to add them together. And instead of rewriting them, I just like to write, oh, look, I'm adding them. And again, I'm just going to scroll up into my calculator to add them together instead of retyping it. Retyping it just will make more mistakes if we retype it all. And then at the very end, we're looking for the nearest foot again. So I'm going to round this to 118 feet. Done. All right, I'm going to let you guys work on this more if you'd like in the note packet yourself if you need more practice. There's also a formative with 1 or 2 questions on it to let you practice for some instant feedback. But please come up if you have any questions.